Welcome, everyone. Oops. We'll get our audio solved in just a second. There's a little bit of echo. So, yeah. Let's try it. Nope.
行，这个电脑用哪边呢？现在可以。
Okay, let's see if we can just sort that out quickly. Okay, I think that we have unmuted you if you want to give it a try.
Good morning. Are you talking to me?
Yes. Yes. Maxine, would you like to welcome everyone with some opening remarks?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. I see some familiar faces on the chat. I don't know if you can see me, so I'm trying to not to make any funny faces. Welcome to the opening session of the Virtual Alumni Conference. I want to thank American Councils for organizing this, and I want to thank everybody for taking time out of your day to participate. I look forward to hearing from those of you who have been here recently and long ago, and let us know what you're up to and hear some of your strategies. And I officially open and launch this conference.
Thank you very much, Maxine. Like I said, we couldn't do this program without the generous support of the State Department, and we are very grateful for everything they do. So just a quick outline of today's session. So we're going to start off the presentation by giving a few general remarks about sister school relationships and different activities you can do to promote international collaboration. So you can remember you can do these activities regardless of whether or not you have a sister school partnership. You might just be able to find another interested school that's willing to work with you in another country. So you don't necessarily have to have a formal partnership. Then we'll turn it over to the alumni presentations for today. First, we're going to be hearing from Wang Ling, and then we'll be hearing from Gu and Ming. And after they have presented on the sister school partnerships that they have started, then we will turn it over to questions from the audience. So definitely you're welcome to think of questions. You can type them into the chat window at any point during the presentation, but we will try to save most of them until the very end. Certainly if it's something urgent that you need to know right away, maybe a point of clarification, you're always welcome to type that in the chat. We can try and address it as we go. But for the most part, please consider saving your questions until the end. Everybody remembers the parking lot, so try and think of it just like that. So to start with, for those of you who might not be familiar, a sister school partnership is really just defined as two schools from different nations that work together on collaborative projects with the goal of cultural exchange and mutual understanding. So sometimes this can include a formalized agreement where maybe the principals of both schools will sign a document saying that they promise to work together, that they promise to be sister schools. But often it can really just be two schools that have agreed that they have an interest in working together. Sometimes that can just be maybe one teacher from one school and one teacher from the other school partnering together to have their students work on projects together and exchange ideas and communicate with one another. So there's a variety of ways that it can look. We know that some people will have really formal programs where maybe principals will do a principal exchange and visit each other's schools, and we think that's fabulous. But remember, you don't need that to have a sister school partnership or to foster international collaboration. So some things to think about when you are starting out with having this dream of creating maybe a sister school relationship, or again, just general international collaboration. Remember to think about identifying some shared goals. So by this, we just mean, think about some things that both parties want to achieve. For sister school partnerships to be really effective, it's important that both schools feel like they're really benefiting from the exchange. So for example, you want to make sure that students in both countries are learning from each other, and it's not just maybe a one-way exchange of ideas. So think about the shared goals that you have. It's important to try and maintain consistent communication. We know that is oftentimes very challenging. Sometimes students will say, "Oh, I don't know what to talk about with my e-pal or my pen pal." So it's up to the teacher to try and help create things for them to talk about. Maybe you can use things like project-based learning to have students engage in conversation about a specific topic that maybe they're both working on. We'll provide some ideas of this later, and you'll certainly hear lots of ideas from your fellow alumni today. It's also a good idea, especially in terms of thinking about how to coordinate consistent communication. Keep in mind the scheduling in both countries. This can certainly be a challenge, what with time differences and different holidays, but it's absolutely possible to coordinate this. It just takes a little bit of planning and some kind of critical thinking about what's going to work in your situation. It's a good idea to think about and decide on what types of projects are practical for you to complete. So for example, if you know you're going to be partnered with maybe a social studies teacher in the United States, and you know you are teaching English in your home country, maybe don't choose something that's about science. Try to make sure that you're thinking about what projects fit with the situation that you're in. So decide on what type of projects are practical in terms of subjects, also in terms of the grades. So think about what age the students are, and try to come up with activities that are going to be relevant for them. Just like with language learning, we talk about making sure that content is relevant to students. It's going to be the same with the Sister School project. And of course, it's a good idea to involve students in that process. So ask them for ideas about projects. Ask them for ideas about what they'd like to learn from their peers. Those are great ways to start. So these are just some things to keep in mind if you are hopefully thinking about, you know, working on an international collaboration project in your school. And so those are some good tips to get started. So I now want to introduce our first alumni presenter for today, Wang Ling. She participated in TCLP from 2018 to 2019. She's originally from Yiyang, China. She's a senior English teacher at #1 High School of Luoyang in Hunan Province. She received her master's degree in education from Hunan Normal University and has been an English teacher for over 20 years. She has received the award for excellent English teachers in Changsha City several times, and she was one of the first 600 outstanding teachers in Changsha. She's been involved with international collaboration and international exchange work since the very beginning at her school, and she helped to write the first partnership agreement for her school, and that was over 13 years ago. She was hosted by Chariho Regional High School in Wood River Junction, Rhode Island, and we are very excited to welcome her today to talk about how she has started a sister school relationship with her TCLP host school. Well, welcome, Wang Ling. Thank you for talking to us today. Let's make sure that we can hear you. Wang Ling, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Oh yeah. Thank you for giving me such a good opportunity. Today I'll tell you some of my activities which I did for my school, my home school in China is very, put great emphasis on the international relationship, exchange relationship. So up to now, we have had 7 sister schools all over the world. And I was the chairman of the English department. I have been involved in this kind of events for many times. So I'm familiar with the events. So today I just tell you what I did to establish the sister school between Chariho and my home school in China. I divide them into 3 parts. So, I cannot control it, yeah? Is it control me? So what was done when I was in the USA, what has been done when I'm back to China, and what is going to be done in the future? Oh yeah, can I move to the next one? So very soon after I worked in Chariho, I had meetings with Craig, the principal, John, my mentor teacher, for discussion. We have a kind of sister school relationships. But the first real step is to help 2 principals get connected by emails. So the email connections between 2 principals made them know each other, know each other's school, and they got their agreement on establishing the sister school relationships. And I acted as the translator for 2 of them. When I was in Chariho, we had some video classes between the 2 schools. So my Chinese class in Chariho High School and the class in grade 1 in my home school had video classes. So this is Miss Wang Jinfang, the English teacher in that class, and I organized the video classes. So the classes we choose the time when it was in the evening in China and it's in the morning in the USA, because my school is a boarding school. So the students stay in the school and they have evening classes. It was in both English and the Chinese. So I think it's very good activity for both the American students and the Chinese students to practice their target language. So I think they really had a very good time. The third step, I helped the two principals have video conferences. So I acted as the interpreter for Mr. Craig Mackenzie, and my Chinese colleague, Ms. Xu Jin, an English teacher in my home school, acted as the interpreter for Mr. Yuan Zhangjun, who is also the principal in my home school. So they become closer through the video conference, and they shared a lot about their theories and ideas of running a school. So since let's move on to the next one. Since my homeschool in China, we have an independent part, we have an art school. So we do another activity between Cherry Hall and my homeschool, the art exchange. The art exchange. So, it's too fast. Yeah. So, Stacy, an art teacher in Cherry Hall, they helped me to organize the students in Cherry Hall, and another colleague in China, Zhang Feng, he helped me to organize this party in China. So right now, all the artworks due by art students from #1 middle school are displayed in Cherry Hall Regional High School. So there are 4 pictures. These are the works of the student. And then the artworks drawn by art students in Cherry Hall High School are also displayed in our school now. And so when Craig, the principal, visited us this July, he was so happy to see and enjoy the works by his American students. Yeah. And right now we are trying to do another work exchange. So when we visit Cherry Hall this February, I will present the Chinese students' works to them. And then we'll take back what the students in Cherry Hall draw to China. And this time the theme will be on nature. The first time is on nature, but the second time it will be on love and peace. When I'm back to China, I continued working on the sister school project. Such as what I just said, we still had the video classes. We are also working on another artwork exchange, but the most important event is Mr. Craig Mackenzie's visit in my city. So he visited before I went back to China. So first I asked my daughter and then asked my colleagues to accompany him. But I joined them the next day I arrived and accompanied him all the time to finish all the other activities until he left. He stayed a whole week in my school. So this picture shows these 2 principals were signing the agreement. It's kind of snow, I'm sorry. And they, oh, sorry. Oh, it's kind of.
You want me to take the control back?
Yeah, so,
okay.
Yeah, so, I'm sorry.
Okay, so just stop touching the screen.
Stop from the second one when is visiting. After the 2 principals sign. It's kind of snow, but yeah, sometimes I cannot control that. Sorry.
Yeah, okay. So this is where we were, I think?
Yeah, this one is one. Yeah, there. So the first day is a Monday. So Mr. Craig McKenzie was delivering a speech in the morning assembly in front of all students and the teachers. Yeah. And then we focus on grade 1, that is senior, grade 11, that is senior 1. So Mr. Craig McKenzie was talking to the English teachers in senior 1. We have 20 classes in one grade. And this one shows 2 principals will join the classes together. In 2 hours, both of them covered almost 20 classes, and Mr. Craig always give the students encouragement to learn English well and call on them to visit Cherry Hill in the USA. This picture shows what the Craig is talking with the students in their spare time. He was such a popular figure during that week. So the students will talk to him as soon as they have the chance. Oh, I cannot move on now. Yes, okay. So Craig especially visited the class who did the exchange with Cherry Hill. And he was speaking in the art class with the works from Cherry Hill being displayed, on the slide. And this is the teacher who did the exchange class for us. This one, Mr. Craig McKenzie was observing a Chinese class. Because the theme is Shakespeare's Hamlet, so Craig was asked to read some lines in English, while a Chinese student read the lines in Chinese. That's really funny and interesting. We also visited some other schools around. This one is a middle school attached to my school. So their students will also join our delegation to visit Cherry Hill this time. So what's going to be done? So right now we have, oh, I cannot click on it. So we will visit Cherry Hill from January 27th to February 9th in this winter vacation. These are the posters we call on the students to join us. And we are so happy that we have been allowed to visit TCLP in American Council when we are in Washington, DC. I'm really excited about that. And their delegation will visit us in April 2020. Right now, we are sending them the invitation letter, and we're working on that. So for the future plan in the long term, first, we will have more regular joint classroom projects, such as video classes. That's what we are doing now, speech competition, video conferences, service learning projects, and so on. Now, we also want to have some cross-training projects for teachers in both schools, such as exchange teacher and sharing innovative teaching method. We also want to have some exchange program for the students in both schools, such as getting Chinese students study in Cherry Hill as international students. Right now, one of the students is applying for that. And she wants to, apply for the American universities. And then if the Cherry Hill students can also study in New Yangon High School as international students or volunteers in their gap year. We wanted to build a Confucius classroom in Cherry Hill as what we have done in the UK sister school in the future, if it is possible. So I hope it's a long-lasting project, and we'll still have a lot of things to do. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Wang Ling.
Okay.
You did a wonderful job presenting that. That was really interesting, and I hope that everyone learned a lot from that and got some ideas about different things that they could do. Lots of great examples of different activities there. And Zara would like to say a few words as well.
Wang Ling, I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
One of them is, you said that this time when you come back to the US, it's going to be middle school and high school students that you are bringing with you to from China. Is that correct?
Yes. So aged from 15 to 18, I think.
Mm-hmm. And are the middle school students going to visit the middle school in Chiraho, or are they going to be in the high school together with the rest of the group? Because I'm thinking it's a possibility for the middle school in Chiraho to also get involved with you and TCLP.
Definitely, we'll visit both of them because Chiraho High School and the middle school are very close to each other. It's just several meters away. And they also have classes, the Chinese classes in middle school and high school there. And the host families are probably from the, I think, the Chinese class there.
Wonderful. And my other question is related. You said that there are 13 students from your high school that would like to come and study in Chiraho High School for a year.
Yeah, for a year. They're planning for that, but right now she is studying, for the English proficiency certificate to get that first.
Because I'm not sure whether our alumni know about this, but American Councils also helps students with J1 visas. So you are thinking about sending your students to the US to study, basically, American Councils can help with getting the J1 visa, because we issue students that type of assistance as well.
That's great news for the students. That's great news. So visa always a very, very complicated thing for the students. If TCLP can help us to do that, that's easier for the students. We show great thanks to you. Yeah.
And my last question, you mentioned that you are going to do environmental projects between the two schools. Can you talk a little bit more about what type of ideas do you have related to environmental exchanges or projects related to environment? Because that's already using global competence.
So right now, what we are doing is still do the, artwork exchange. This time, we ask the student to draw pictures on the theme, love and nature, but environmental. So just to do the world exchange. Sorry, I cannot hear very clearly. Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, go ahead.
I cannot hear very clearly right now. I don't know what's wrong.
Can you hear us now?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So sorry. So yeah, you mean for the environmental?
Yeah.
We just wanted to, when we are in Cherry Hill, because they have a farm there. So I asked my Chinese students to do some activities on their farm. They have chickens, they have plants planted by them, and they can have very, very cute, different plants. So I want my Chinese students to experience a quite different one. And from what Cherry Hill they're doing, maybe they can know better about something about the environment or about the nature. That's it.
And I was kidding when I said last question. Here is one more question. When you said that you would like to do cross-training projects for teachers, can you talk a bit more about that? How do you envision doing it?
So Mr. Craig McKenzie and Mr. Yan Jiangjun, the two principals, the last time when they are signing the agreement, they're kind of reach agreement that they wanted to exchange the teachers for 1 year or a term. That means half a year. Yeah, and since my school in China, we have a Confucius classroom in one of the sister school in UK. So if it's possible, that's what I just mentioned in the last part, if we can have a Confucius classroom in Cherry Hill, because they really wanted to, you know, carry on, move on, continue to have the Chinese program there. So that means they can directly get a Chinese teacher from my school. And in my home school in China, each year we needed 2 oral teacher that's from native, from America or England, Britain. That means native English speakers. So that means if we can do that one, we can just directly ask oral teachers from Cherry Hill. That's what we are planning.
The reason that I was asking you because it reminded me of a different project that a couple of years ago one of our alumni did, was that they did virtual teacher training exchange. And the way that it was working was that the teachers would exchange with each other the video of their class teaching techniques, and then they would debrief with each other what was working and what they were doing, and basically they were helping each other to get training virtually, just by commenting and analyzing the videos that they were exchanging with each other. And this is another possibility if the in-person teacher exchanges is not that easy to organize. And
yes,
it's wonderful that your school is thinking about going in that direction. In case this doesn't work for all of our alumni, that's also a possibility of exchanging videos and then debriefing on the videos with each other through like virtual classrooms.
That's a really good suggestion. I tell my 2 principals, and maybe we can do that later. It's easier, you know. It's much easier than that one. Thank you for suggestion. Yeah, that's good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And if anyone else in the audience has questions, just remember you can either type them in the chat window and we'll get to them later, or you might, I think, since I don't see any questions right now, we'll go ahead and move on to our next alumni presenter, Gu Wenming. So Gu Wenming participated in TCLP from 2016 to 2017. He holds a master's degree in curriculum and methodology from Tianjin Normal University, and he's been a teacher at Handan No. 2 Senior High School since 2005. He's also a vice principal responsible for international affairs. He was hosted by Captain Nathan Hale Middle School in Coventry, Connecticut, and while he was in the United States, he started working on establishing a sister school relationship with his home school and his host school in the US. So since 2017, the schools have been conducting several activities, and we're all very excited for this. In April of 2020, more than 10 students and teachers, as well as the principal of Captain Nathan Hale Middle School, will visit Gu Wenming School. And we are certainly very excited to hear some of the activities that he has done with his host school and his homeschool. And so without any further ado, Gu Wenming, can you take it away? Make sure your audio is on.
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you. Welcome.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Yeah, it's my great pleasure to have this opportunity to give my presentation about establishing sister school relationship. Yeah, thank Thanks to the help of TCLP, I could experience the American education and culture in person for a whole school year. Yeah. Now I'd like to talk about how about establishing a sister school relationship. Yeah. Please tell the first, yeah. How do we do this? First of all, above all, impress the host school with hard work and capacity. That is to say, your work at the host school at least should be approved by the students, the parents, and the faculty, and of course the principal. This is the basic foundation, I think, for establishing the sister school relationship. Yes. And then the next slide, please, yes. And B, consult with homeschool to get its intention. Yes, you should make sure that the principal of your homeschool has the aspiration to establish a sister school relationship with your host school. You can introduce what projects and programs and collaborations would be done with your host school and the potential benefits to your principal. Once the principal of your school, of your home school has determined to do so, you'd better go and ask and consult your mentor teacher about the intention of your host school and the details about the collaborations. After you get the positive feedback from your mentor, you may go and see the principal of your host school to express the intention for your school, and the next step is to make an agreement and then sign it. So this is how do we do this? And then why do we do this? As for me, I cherish the friendship acquired in my host school and community. I want to maintain and promote it, contacting and cooperating with my American friends frequently. That can definitely improve my English and teaching methodology. It is really amazing. As for both schools, I think if we have a sister school relationship, and then we can broaden the students' horizon and help the students make friends from different cultures. So this is very good for the students. And this can motivate the students to learn English for my students, from my homeschool students. And then for the American students, they motivated the Chinese language, to learn the Chinese language. And then this can help the students develop their global competence, of course. So this is the reason why we establish the sister school relationship. And what we have done, yeah, first of all, I'd like to say we have organized the students from both schools to find pen pals for several times. Many students matched very well and sent emails regularly to each other, and they have been good friends now. Second, we have made several video clips on school lives, festivals, cultures, and other topics. Students also asked many questions they concerned, and they gave the answers to each other by exchanging record video clips. And third, we have conducted virtual classes for 3 times. Students from both sides are very excited when they learned the news, and they were eager to get well prepared for the virtual class. They went to the library to consult their reference books, surf the net, and then more relevant knowledges on the topic they are going to talk about. They also studied the local culture and taboos, and even pragmatics. And fourth, exchange visit. From April the 17th to 20th, 2020, a group of 7 students and 8 adults from my host school will definitely be visiting my home school. One of the students named Alicia learned Mandarin with me for a whole school year. And I taught all the other 6 students when I did my outreach in the elementary school in Coventry, Connecticut. Believe it or not, 7 of the 8 adults are my good friends. My mentor teacher, Debbie Page, and the principal, Dina DeJulius, are among them. I am so excited. I'm very much looking forward to hosting them in my home school. We have already made a visit schedule, and it is still being improved now. And for the 4th part, our future plans. Our school will organize our students to visit Captain Nathan Hill Middle School in summer vacation 2021. And then, of course, we'll keep our contact and communication through virtual classes. And the students loved the virtual classroom very much. And thirdly, we'll hold small online forums between both teachers regularly. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gu Wenming. That was really helpful and informative. It was nice to see how you structured your plans for creating the Sister School Partnership. You kind of walking through how you learned a little bit about what both schools wanted to get out of the arrangement, and then that eventually led to signing a more formal agreement. If anyone has questions for Gu Wenming or for Wang Ling, you can definitely start thinking about them and writing them into the chat window. For the next couple of slides, I'm just going to go through a few kind of basic ideas, and certainly these slides will be available on our website, so you do not have to try and write everything down if you see any of these ideas and think, oh, that's something I'd like to do. We will have these slides available, so this is just meant to provide you with some kind of general examples. So these are some basic collaborative project ideas. These would be suitable for students kind of all ages, because they are not necessarily, they don't have to be that advanced. Of course, there are different ways that you could make them more advanced for older students, or kind of simplify them a little bit for younger students. So these are all some kind of general ideas. Certainly, we've heard some of these from different presenters already. So we heard how Wang Ling did something with an art exchange, so that's something that you've seen a great example of. There are also ways that you could do different things that involve exchanging actual tangible products back and forth. A great idea is something called a culture box. This is where each class or each school will put together kind of a box of objects that are important to them, maybe that signify something important about their daily lives. So Americans might put in, this is kind of even a little bit old-fashioned at this point, but something like a CD of music, or maybe a flash drive with songs on it to exchange that back and forth. And so things that relate to how they live, maybe a magazine. And so then they send that to their partners. Certainly celebrating holidays and festivals together is a great idea. That way it's a great opportunity for students to learn about celebrations in another culture. That's a really unique opportunity for students to connect with their peers in another way. Some more specific examples, and so remember, this list is going to be available in the slides on our website, but some more detailed projects these are some great ways that you could create a group project for students to work on. So there's something called, you could do a country collage, and this is where students work in a group to put together a collage of things that represent their community, or you could do their country or their state in the US, depends on their town, city. You can kind of scale that to be whatever you'd like and whatever makes the most sense, but students can exchange collages, and they can share things like local history, geography, natural resources, food, pop culture. These are all great ways for them to both practice a foreign language and learn a little bit more about their peers. Students could also potentially make a travel brochure. And so in this situation, students can research their sister school community, state, or country, and the class can compile pictures that combine them with different paragraphs. This is a great opportunity for students to maybe practice some writing skills if they have them, and can put together a brochure to like a travel brochure or something of that nature. So that one, students are researching their sister school. Another way you could flip it is if students can make a flyer or a travel brochure of their own culture and then share it with their sister school peers. So I mentioned a culture box. I think this is something that's really cool. We have a few people who might be doing that this year while they're in the United States. I don't think we have any current teachers here, but this is a really unique idea. So it's where, like I said, they can send a package to their sister school containing items that students feel represent their community. And this is a great way for them to learn about how their peers kind of live, a little almost like a time capsule, but for the current time. And then I also mentioned a holiday or festival exchange. So this is a great way for students to learn about different holidays and festivals that their peers celebrate, and there are lots of ways that this could be done. Something that I know, Wang Ling, you did this, and maybe it's something that you could also talk a little bit more about. You celebrated graduation with your students, and so that was something that was really unique, and that's similar to a holiday festival exchange and celebrating an important event in the year. So that maybe you can talk more about that when we turn it over to questions. So some other things, you can definitely incorporate science, social studies, other subjects into your sister school partnership or your international collaboration project. So students could do something like a geography project where they can perhaps make a map of their area and focus on specific landmarks or geographical features. This is another great way for them to practice maybe a specific unit of vocabulary that are related to geography. This is a kind of a fun way for students who also might not necessarily latch on to learning a language, but might be really great at maybe science or natural resources to connect with their peers in another country and maybe get them more excited about learning a language. Same goes for a natural or native wildlife project. So in this situation, students can study and research native wildlife in their area and maybe create a presentation, put together pictures or drawings or something to kind of represent what the local wildlife could be like. This is great for students who love animals. This could be done, again, on different levels depending on students' grades. You can see this being done with maybe really young students, and maybe it's something more like using animal puppets or something like that, or it could be done with older students where they could really get into some of the more advanced levels of understanding an ecosystem in that area of the country or of the world where they live. And again, these descriptions are all going to be posted on our website. So I'm just kind of going over them quickly to hopefully spark some interest, but you're absolutely welcome to review these in more depth after the presentation. Some other things that you could do would be creating books to share. So a phrase book project can be something really fun, especially for the American students. Probably want to focus, I'm sure their teachers would focus on making sure that these are appropriate phrase books. But definitely it's a good idea. It can help students to learn a little bit more slang, maybe learn some of the phrases and words that are not going to be taught to them when they learn either book English or book Chinese or Arabic. Can be a great way for students to learn different phrases. Students can compile phrases that they say in their native language and then share them with their sister school. This can be done either over email, so where there's no video, or maybe even better, they can do a video exchange where they can teach their peers how to say these phrases, how to pronounce them. That can be really unique and can certainly help if they're planning an in-person exchange at some point in the future. Another option is a folklore exchange. So in this scenario, schools select a traditional story or maybe a set of stories that are kind of important to their culture, maybe the kind of classic children's stories that everyone will learn as a child. And sister schools can send them a book or just kind of type up stories. Maybe students could practice writing by retelling the story in their own words, summarizing it for their peers. If it is a physical book, and the book is sent back and forth, it can be put on display in the school library, and that can kind of help to maybe alert other students or other faculty in the school to the existence of the sister school project. So that can be another way of encouraging reading and encouraging literacy in your sister school project, as well as incorporating language and developing those language skills. So some things that are important to think about when designing a project, remember to consider your audience. So these basic projects, the ones that I've kind of discussed before, would require relatively minimal classroom time to incorporate into your sister school partnership. So they're a little bit less time consuming, and they're relatively simplistic in structure and content, rather than some more intermediate or advanced projects. And I'll have a few examples of those in a minute. The approximate time needed for each of them would be about 1 to 3 hours a week. And like I said, they could really be adjusted to be relevant to elementary all the way through high school. So it just depends on the level of detail maybe that you're including. Intermediate projects, in contrast, will require more class time than just basic projects, and they'll incorporate more critical thinking and analytical skills from the students. It might also require more frequent correspondence between teachers and students in order to complete these projects successfully. And of course, they'll also require more time per week. And they're really going to be more appropriate for probably grades 5 through high school. And so some examples of some more advanced projects that you could do would involve maybe politics and leadership. So there's a heroes or leaders discussion. In this situation, students choose people who represent their country and who are viewed as heroes or noble leaders. And of course, they can be high profile people, but they could also be everyday people who maybe they think of as a hero in their own lives. And then they talk about values, talk about what makes that person so important either for them personally or for the country. And this is a great way for students to really think about culture, what's important for leadership qualities within their culture. How does that maybe differ from their peers' culture? And so this is a great way for them to think a little bit more critically about the role of leadership in culture. And this can be a really fascinating project, but again, better to do this with probably older students because they're going to have a little bit more of those critical thinking skills. When you talk to them about differences in culture and differences in values, they'll have a little bit more understanding of that topic. So it's certainly a little bit more in depth. Same thing goes for citizen diplomacy. So in this scenario, teachers can conduct a classroom workshop defining and drawing examples on citizen diplomacy. And so they can, so for example, it's talking about what does it mean to be diplomatic? What is a citizen diplomat? What are some ways that students can act as citizen diplomats? And again, this is a fantastic thing to do if you are doing certainly an in-person exchange, but also even a virtual exchange. This would still be very relevant and helping students to think about what are some ways that they can be citizen diplomats. Another situation you could do is to choose a crisis or situation where diplomacy is needed. And so ideally, this would involve both sister school countries and have students act out different roles in a simulation where they have to work together. This is a kind of, for those of you who are familiar with the Diplomacy Center, this is something that is hosted by the US State Department. They have great online resources where you could get some inspiration for a simulation. You could possibly even use one of their simulations, just tailor it to your context a little bit if there are certain topics that you need to adjust for your audience. But definitely this is a great place to go to get inspiration for different scenarios that you could do. And this is a great way for students to practice compromise and working together and kind of understanding where different parties might be coming from in an international situation. So this is a great activity, but again, it's going to be easier to do this and they're going to get more out of it when they're a little bit older. So again, this is more appropriate for high school students probably. Talking about language specifically and some different language projects you could do, again, with probably older students, maybe those that have a little bit more advanced language skills. So certainly we know that many sister school partnerships are based on language exchange, and so there are lots of ways that you could really involve this. So for example, students could prepare different quizzes or tests for one another, and see how they do on those things. They could also exchange papers or newspapers. Maybe if your school has a newspaper, that can be a great thing to do, to exchange newspapers and then have the students read that newspaper in another language. If your school doesn't necessarily have a newspaper, you can certainly have students create their own newspaper. Maybe it can be just a language class newspaper about what are they learning, what are they doing in their language class. World literature comparison is also a great idea. So in this scenario, teachers choose a piece of classical literature that was written by an author from their country or region, and students read that piece of literature and compare it to maybe a classical work of literature from their own country or from another part of the world. This can also be a great way of partnering maybe with a world literature class if your school has one of those. We know many US schools will have those. Of course, then the students would have to, they might have to read it in English if they are not necessarily studying that language, but it can still be a great way of encouraging international communication and encouraging them to think more broadly about their world, encouraging critical thinking skills. There are certainly ways that you could combine some of these projects. So you could see how maybe this world literature comparison could fit really well into maybe a bigger unit about the leaders and heroes. Maybe you're looking at literature, like figures of literature. So there are lots of ways that you could kind of tailor these to fit with your students and your interests, your students' interests. These are all just some general ideas to get you thinking. And remember, you can always apply for a CLP if you need more funding to promote these projects. So the critical language project grant, up to $3,000, you can get it for your homeschool or your host school. You could get it so that perhaps they could visit one another, to do a sister school project, or to sign an MOU. There are lots of ways to use a CLP to support your international collaboration project. And that's a really great way of supporting your projects in case you need a little bit of extra funding to get something started. So at this point, I want to turn it over to questions from the audience. Does anyone have any questions for the presenters we've heard from today, or for our staff? Oh, so I just want to make a quick correction. So the US Diplomacy Center is actually now referred to as the National Museum of American Diplomacy. So if anyone is trying to search that, just make sure you type National Museum of American Diplomacy, and they have lots of great resources on different international simulations you could do. And I will just type that in the chat window now in case you want to search that to get some ideas.
Hi everyone. While you're thinking about questions, I want also to say a couple of words connected with other available resources. A couple of years ago, one of our alumni did a cross-curricular project-based learning between her homeschool in Egypt and US host school. And the way that they did it was that the entire school was involved in cross-curricular projects. They selected themes that would be applicable for geography, history, social studies, language arts, art itself, and it was related to river. How does a river shape a country? And history classes were doing projects related to figuring out what was the impact of Nile on the development of Egypt historically, how it is helping the development of Egypt connected with modern country, how the geography was shaped, how it impacted the economy of the country. And in the same way, the host school in the US had also a river passing next to them. As far as I remember, the school was somewhere in Pittsburgh. So they were also involved in similar projects, looking to see how the rivers that pass through Pittsburgh helped to shape Pittsburgh the way it is now. So this type of projects does not even need to be between one class and two classes on different sides of the ocean. It can involve the entire school. And then they organized a fair based on their projects that they learned about. So they had all the posters that the students were presenting to each other. So there was tons of information that the students learned about different subject areas, just learning from each other, hearing each other presenting the posters. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that you saw the project related to travel brochures. We had a similar project that was again done where the two teams created travel brochures, and at that time they also applied for National Geographic funding to publish the brochures. So it's a possibility to do that as well. Another great resource for doing project-based learning is looking through the Smithsonian Museum lesson plans for the teachers. You might remember when you were all over here, we took you to Smithsonian, to the National Art Gallery. Each museum that belongs to the Smithsonian have a requirement to develop lesson plans for teachers. And many of these lesson plans are related, depending on the topic of the or the specifics of the museum. It can be related to history, to geography, to economy, to you name it, to art. And many of these lesson plans can be used virtually as well, because when they tailor these lesson plans, they are thinking about, in many cases, about virtual delivery of the lessons. So these are things that you can consider for executing your project. And one last thing, I'm not quite sure whether the World Bank still has that program, but World Bank used to give funding for art-related projects. So for example, if you are doing art exchanges and you would like to exchange artifacts or the art products that your students have created, there is a possibility of getting some tiny amount of funding from the World Bank as well. Dawn, would you like to answer that question? We have Dawn from the Rilo from based in China, who has helped American councils, TCLP teachers to do a lot of trainings together with their participants in China. And there is a question for Dawn whether Mahmoud, who is right now in China, can participate in relay activities. Mahmoud, we can't see Dawn right now among the participants. She might have logged out, but we can ask Wang Hui, our staff in Beijing, to check with her, and we'll get back to you. Where there is a question connected whether TCLP can send an invitation letter. We technically can send a letter, but it might be more appropriate if the school sends this letter. We can say that you have participated in the program. We can send an invitation letter for you, Wang Ling, but the invitation would have a better effect on the US Embassy if it's coming from the school that is going to host the principal. Any other questions, folks?
I don't see any other questions in the chat window for now. Remember, there is a session tomorrow, so if you think of questions, you can always save them for tomorrow to ask them as well. I now want to turn it over to Zara to give a few closing remarks, and I hope that I'll see you back here again tomorrow for day 2 of our session.
Well, my closing remarks are not going to be in reality closing, because I do hope that I will see all your names again over here tomorrow. And I would just say that it's incredible work that you are all doing in your home countries. We are so privileged to have the opportunity to work with you all. And it's amazing to see so many names that are coming from 2000, I would say 8, 9, all the way to last year. There is always that sense of TCLP community, TCLP family. And though we are apart right now by an ocean, we are still a family. And we are so happy to see all of your names popping up on the screen. And we are always looking to find out what are you doing in your schools, in your everyday life. Just send us information because we miss you. And we want to learn what is happening in your professional life, in your personal life even. Sometimes we get pictures of cute little babies that have been added to the family. Or we learn that someone has married, someone is in a different country. Share with us anything that comes to mind, because that's how we know that we are still close with each other, regardless of how far apart we are by an ocean. Thank you once again for being part of the TCLP family. Thank you once again for participating in this conference. And we are looking forward to seeing you tomorrow. And I would also like to take a moment to thank State Department for their funding, because without that funding, we would not be part of a big TCLP family. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We can't wait to see you again tomorrow.
Bye, guys.